Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and suddenly the whole energy shifts? They don't talk louder. They don't pretend to be confident. They don't act powerful. They are powerful not because of who they know, not because of what they have, but because of the way they communicate. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to communicate like that with a presence so sharp, so controlled, so intentional, that people feel it before they even understand it. These aren't tricks. These aren't tactics. These are 5 communication secrets that give you an unfair advantage over anyone else. Let's begin the moment you walk into a room. Before you say a single word, before you even take your seat, a decision is already being made about you, and most people don't even realize it. They spend years trying to improve their communication, their confidence, their speaking skills. But the game is often decided in those first few seconds. That tiny window determines whether people see you as someone to pay attention to, someone to take seriously, someone to respect, or someone they can ignore. Those first moments are not about talking, they're about presence, energy, command, and this is where most people lose the room without even knowing why. They enter with their head down, adjusting their clothes, fumbling with their phone, scanning the environment like they're apologizing for taking up space. They shrink instead of expand, they react instead of lead. And when you do that, the room immediately categorizes you as low priority. You don't get a second chance at that first impression because people subconsciously lock in their judgment and spend the rest of the interaction simply confirming what they already felt. The person with real power understands that the room reads them long before they speak. People aren't listening to you first, they are feeling you. Your posture communicates, your eyes communicate, the pace of your steps communicates. How you breathe communicates, and all of that speaks louder than any words you could ever use. That's why controlling the first 5 seconds is not optional, it's everything. When you enter with confidence, not fake confidence, but grounded, calm, intentional presence, you immediately shift the energy. You don't storm in trying to prove anything. You don't plaster a forced smile on your face. You don't walk in like you're performing. You enter with stillness. You move with certainty. You look around the room like you're observing, not seeking approval. You let your presence settle in the space before you even speak, because this is what high-status communicators do. They arrive. Your body must communicate before your mouth does. Straight posture, shoulders relaxed, chin slightly up, slow, unhurried movements that signals control. People feel it instinctively. No one respects someone who looks lost in their own skin. But everyone pays attention to someone who looks like they have themselves handled. Then there's the way you make eye contact. Most people avoid it or overdo it. Both communicate insecurity. What works is grounded, relaxed eye contact. You look at people the way a leader looks at their environment, calm, observant, present. You're not searching for validation in their eyes. You're simply acknowledging their existence. That alone flips the dynamic. It signals, I belong here. I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to contribute. Your breathing matters too. If you walk in breathing shallow, you communicate urgency, anxiety, instability. If your breath is slow, steady, grounded, you communicate control. People trust someone who looks like they trust themselves. They listen to someone who looks like they are not in a hurry to prove anything. The reality is, you don't need to say anything profound in the first few seconds. You don't need to impress anyone with a clever line. Your strength is in what you don't do. You don't rush. You don't shrink. You don't overperform. You simply exist with intention. And in a world full of frantic energy, that calm presence becomes magnetic. When you open your mouth to speak, your tone must match your presence. Smooth, measured, direct, no apologizing, no softness out of fear, no unnecessary laughter to fill space. You're not trying to win people over, you're allowing them to adjust to your energy. That alone makes you stand out immediately. Most people talk fast because they want approval fast, but the person who takes their time speaks from power. This is what controlling the first 5 seconds really means. You set the frame. You set the tone. You tell the room without words exactly who you are, and once that frame is set, people interact with you differently. They listen more carefully. They take your words more seriously. They treat you with higher respect, not because you demanded it, but because you communicated it through your energy before your voice ever entered the conversation. Think about the people you admire. The ones who walk into a room and you feel their presence. They're not the loudest. They're not the fastest talkers. They're not performing. They're grounded, collected, in control of themselves. That's why they control the room. You can do the same. You don't need more confidence. You need more intention. You don't need to fake power. You need to stop leaking insecurity. Those first 5 seconds are not about proving anything. They're about showing that you are comfortable, aligned, certain, and when you communicate that without words, you win the room before the conversation even starts. Master the first 5 seconds, and you won't need to chase attention. Attention will naturally move toward you. Most people think communication is about saying more, explaining more, filling every silence with words so no one misunderstands them. But the truth is the opposite. The more you talk, the more you dilute your presence. The more you explain, the more you reveal insecurity. The more you try to convince people, the weaker your message feels. Power is never in the volume of your words. Power is in the weight of your words. People who speak less aren't quiet because they have nothing to say. They're quiet because they don't need to perform. They don't rush to fill space. They don't compete for attention. They don't speak to gain approval. They speak because they have something intentional to deliver, and that difference is what makes every sentence hit harder. You've seen it, the person who barely says anything, but when they finally do, the whole room stops. That effect doesn't come from louder talking. It comes from speaking with precision, certainty, and purpose. The reason most people talk too much is simple. They're uncomfortable with silence. Silence exposes insecurity. Silence forces you to be present with yourself. Silence removes the noise and leaves only truth. So people ramble to avoid that. They over-explain because they don't fully believe in what they're saying. They add unnecessary words because they hope quantity can replace confidence, but it can't. The person who speaks often is rarely the one who gets remembered. The person who speaks with impact is the one who gets respected. When you speak less, you create contrast. People notice when you open your mouth. They lean in because your words aren't predictable. They expect something meaningful. But when you constantly talk, people get used to the sound of your voice, and eventually they stop hearing you. You train them to ignore you, but when you hold back, you train them to listen. The key is this: every time you speak, speak from a place of clarity, not from a need to fill space. Say only what matters. Remove the fluff, remove the apologies, remove the fillers, remove the you know, I mean, kind of, and every other phrase that softens your message. You're not trying to sound polite, you're trying to sound certain. Your communication becomes powerful the moment your words stop being negotiable. The moment you eliminate unnecessary talking, your presence expands. People can feel the intention behind your sentences. You're no longer speaking out of habit, you're speaking out of conviction. You're not trying to get a reaction, you're delivering truth, and people respect truth even when they don't like it. Especially when they don't like it. There's also a strategy behind speaking less. It gives you room to think. Most people talk first and think later. They react. They spill emotions. They speak to escape pressure. But strong communicators think first, speak next. They use silence as a weapon. They breathe before they respond. They observe before they answer. This gives them control over the direction of the conversation. It gives them authority without needing to raise their voice. It gives them time to choose words that impact, not words that simply occupy space. When you speak less, you stop giving away power. You stop revealing your insecurities. You stop giving people ammunition to judge you. You become harder to read, harder to influence, harder to manipulate. People lean into mystery, and speaking less naturally creates a sense of mystery. Not the artificial kind, the real kind that comes from not needing to display everything you think or feel. Another advantage is this: when you speak less, people reveal more. When you're not rushing to talk, they fill the space, they expose their intentions, they reveal their weaknesses, they show you what they value, what they fear, what they're uncertain about. And the person who listens with intention always has more leverage than the person who speaks impulsively. You gain insight while they lose control. Speaking less doesn't mean being cold or distant, it means being intentional. It means you don't waste words, you don't waste breath, you don't waste energy, you save your voice for what matters. You speak when you choose to, not when you feel pressured to, and that level of self-control is rare. It communicates strength without trying. You become the person whose words land, the person who doesn't need to repeat themselves, the person who talks with impact, not noise, the person who isn't scared of silence because silence is part of your power. The person who doesn't try to impress but ends up having the strongest presence anyway. When you speak less and mean more, people don't just hear your words, they feel your intention. And intention always carries more weight than volume. This is how you stop being ordinary. This is how your communication becomes unforgettable. This is how your presence starts commanding respect without effort. You're no longer trying to be heard. People choose to listen. Most people fear silence because silence exposes them. It reveals their uncertainty, their anxiety, their need for approval. That's why they rush to fill every gap with noise, talking too fast, explaining too much, interrupting their own thoughts just to avoid that uncomfortable pause. What they don't realize is that silence is not weakness, silence is power, silence is control, silence is the space where real influence is created, silence is the moment where the room shifts in your favor. It's the moment where people lean in instead of lean away. It's the moment where your presence expands without you having to force anything. When you learn how to use silence strategically, you stop playing from a place of insecurity. You start playing from a place of dominance. See, weak communicators treat silence like something they must escape from. Strong communicators treat silence like something they command. They understand that silence speaks louder than rushed words. Silence makes people wait. Silence makes people anticipate. Silence makes people take you seriously because you're not scrambling to fill empty space. Empty space belongs to you. When you pause before speaking, you create authority. You show that you think before you respond. You show that you're not emotionally reactive. You show that you're not pressured by urgency. A pause communicates that you're grounded, calm, intentional. And people trust calm energy. They respect it. They follow it. Most people don't even realize how much power there is in a simple 2-second pause. Think about someone who speaks too fast. Their words lose weight. Their message feels unstable. They sound like they're trying to catch up to their own thoughts. Now think about someone who speaks slowly and intentionally, who allows silence to exist before, during, and after their words. Their sentences hit harder, their meaning is clearer, their presence feels stronger. That's the difference silence creates. Strategic silence also changes how people interpret your confidence. When you're comfortable being silent, people assume you're confident. They assume you know what you're talking about. They assume you're in control, because insecure people can't stay silent. They need constant validation. They need to be heard. They need to feel like they're doing something. But the person who can sit in silence without flinching shows that they don't need to perform to be respected. And here's the deeper truth. Silence puts pressure on the other person, not on you. When you stop talking, the other person suddenly becomes aware of themselves. They start wondering what you're thinking. They start second guessing their own words. They start filling the space with their own explanations, clarifications, and emotional slips. Silence makes them reveal more than they intended. Silence gives you information. Silence gives you leverage. People underestimate how much you can learn when you're not talking. When you pause after someone finishes speaking, you give them room to continue. And that continuation is often where their truth comes out. It's where you see their hesitation, their insecurity, their intentions. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and discomfort makes them transparent. Strategic silence isn't about being quiet. It's about choosing your moments. It's about pausing before answering. It's about pausing after you say something important to let the weight settle. It's about using silence to control tempo and rhythm in a conversation. Control the rhythm, and you control the interaction. Think of silence as your punctuation. The right pause after a strong sentence makes that sentence unforgettable. The right pause before a response makes your answer feel more thoughtful. The right pause during a conversation shifts the power dynamic in your favor. Silence is a tool, not an accident. Another powerful aspect of silence is how it affects conflict. When people argue, they raise their voice to dominate. But the person who stays silent, who listens fully, who doesn't break their composure, that person wins the psychological battle, because silence signals emotional discipline, and emotional discipline is rare. Silence also protects your value. The more you talk unnecessarily, the more you devalue your presence. The more you reveal your thoughts impulsively, the easier you are to predict and influence. Strategic silence keeps you unpredictable. It keeps you intentional. It keeps you in control of what you reveal and what you hold back. When you master silence, you master aura. You master pacing. You master perception. People start adjusting to you instead of you adjusting to them. They wait for your words. They respect your pauses. They feel your presence even when you're not speaking. The powerful don't dominate with noise. They dominate with controlled silence. If you can sit comfortably in silence, you don't just appear more confident. You become more confident. You become the person who leads conversations without forcing anything, who commands attention without asking for it, who influences the room effortlessly. Master silence, and every word you speak becomes stronger. Every moment you pause becomes meaningful. Every interaction becomes yours to shape. That is the power of strategic silence. Most people walk into conversations blind. They rush to talk, rush to react, rush to prove themselves without understanding the energy, the intentions, or the dynamics of the people in front of them. They speak first and think later, and then wonder why they get ignored, misunderstood, or underestimated. The truth is simple. The person who observes before they speak always has the upper hand, because observation gives you information, and information gives you control. When you enter a room, the conversation has already started, whether you're speaking or not. People are revealing things through their tone, their body language, their micro expressions, their pacing, their posture. Most people never see it because they're too focused on what they're going to say next. But the person who observes first notices everything. They read the environment before engaging with it. They study the energy before contributing to it, and that awareness makes their words land with accuracy instead of randomness. Observation is not passive. It is intentional awareness. It's the ability to sit still long enough to understand what's really happening beneath the surface. When you speak without observing, you are guessing. When you observe first, you are strategizing, and strategy wins far more than guessing ever will. When you truly observe people, you can tell who is confident and who is pretending. You can tell who is defensive, who is insecure, who is curious, who is resistant. You can see what topics light people up and what makes them tense. You can see who dominates subtly and who tries too hard. The room reveals its hierarchy, its unspoken rules, its emotional temperature, all before you open your mouth. Most people miss all of that because they're too focused on saying something right. But high-level communicators are focused on understanding the room, not performing in it. You learn more in the first 10 seconds of silence than most people learn in 10 minutes of speaking. Because people show you who they are if you're paying attention. Their facial expressions shift when certain words are said. Their breathing changes when they're uncomfortable. Their eyes flicker towards someone they're intimidated by. They lean in when they feel safe. They lean back when they feel challenged. None of this requires them to say anything, and none of this is visible to someone who's busy talking. Observation gives you precision. You don't just talk, you respond. You don't just say things, you say the right things. Your communication stops being generic and becomes intentional. You're not shooting arrows in the dark, you're aiming with clarity. That's why people who observe first seem effortlessly influential. They don't waste words, they speak directly into the truth of the moment. Another advantage of observing first is emotional control. When you're watching instead of reacting, you stay grounded. You're not pulled into other people's energy, you're not pressured by their emotions, you're not influenced by their pace. You decide when to engage, you decide how to respond, you decide the tone of the interaction. Observation gives you time, and time gives you emotional leverage. People who speak too quickly often reveal their insecurities. They expose their thoughts without filter. They show their intentions too early. They give away their position, but someone who observes first remains unreadable. The other person doesn't know what you're thinking. They don't know what angle you're taking. They don't know what your judgment is. That mystery creates respect. It creates curiosity. It creates advantage. When you observe before speaking, you also become a better listener. Not the fake kind of listening where you're just waiting for your turn to talk, but real listening. The kind that absorbs, analyzes, and understands. People feel that. They feel when you're actually paying attention. And when people feel understood, they open up more, they trust more, they reveal more. Observation builds connection faster than words. Another overlooked power of observation is how it shapes your timing. Timing is everything in communication. The right sentence at the wrong moment is ineffective, but when you observe, you learn the rhythm of the conversation. You can sense when to speak, when to pause, when to interrupt, when to hold back. Your timing aligns with the emotional current of the room, and that alone makes your words more impactful. Strong communicators know that the first thing they should do is watch. Watch the tone, watch the pace, watch the reactions, watch the energy, because once you understand the environment, you can shape it. But if you try to shape something you don't understand, you will always come across as off, forced, or out of sync. Observation is your preparation. Observation is your advantage. Observation is the silent intelligence that makes your presence feel sharper, your words feel heavier, and your influence feel natural. The person who observes first never feels the need to dominate instantly because they already control the deeper truth of the interaction, awareness. Speak only after you've seen enough to speak with purpose. That's how you communicate with precision instead of noise. That's how you gain the respect others have to beg for. Most people don't realize how much of their communication, their personality, and even their identity is shaped by one silent addiction: approval. They speak to be liked, they adjust their tone to avoid friction, they hide their opinions to stay safe, they soften their presence so nobody feels uncomfortable, and then they wonder why people don't respect them, why their voice feels weak, why their confidence collapses under pressure. Approval addiction is the fastest way to kill your power. When you need people to like you, you lose control the moment you open your mouth. Your communication becomes reactive, not intentional. You scan faces for validation. You adjust every sentence based on tiny reactions. You measure your worth through other people's micro-expressions. That is not confidence, that is dependence. You're not speaking from truth, you're speaking from fear of losing acceptance. True confidence begins when you break that attachment, when you no longer speak to impress, when you no longer perform to be liked, when you no longer shrink so others feel comfortable. Your voice changes. Your posture changes, your entire presence changes. You stop asking the world for permission to exist. You stop contorting yourself to fit expectations that weren't built for you. You stop apologizing for your opinions, your standards, your personality. And that shift is what makes people finally respect you. Detaching from approval doesn't mean becoming cold or arrogant. It means you stop negotiating your value. You stop begging for external confirmation. You stop anxiously monitoring how people perceive you. You start speaking from conviction, not from insecurity. You start choosing truth over comfort. You start expressing yourself because you believe in what you're saying, not because you want applause for it. Most people don't understand how heavy approval seeking really is. It drains energy, it weakens presence, it creates hesitation. When you rely on others to validate you, you put your entire sense of self in their hands. You let their mood control your confidence, you let their opinions dictate your identity, you let their reactions shape your behavior. That is emotional slavery disguised as politeness. The moment you detach, your communication becomes cleaner. You speak directly, you speak honestly, you speak without over-explaining, you don't soften your truth, you don't wrap your sentences in layers of insecurity, you don't add unnecessary just-checking. If that's okay, I hope you don't mind, or any other weak qualifiers. You speak like someone who respects their own voice, and when you respect your voice, others begin to respect it too. The irony is this: the less you chase approval, the more respect you get. People are naturally drawn to those who don't need anything from them. Someone who speaks without needing agreement feels grounded. Someone who stays calm when misunderstood feels powerful. Someone who doesn't flinch when judged feels untouchable. That kind of presence makes people trust you more, follow you more, and listen to you more. Not because you chase approval, but because you don't. Approval seeking also destroys authenticity. When you're desperate to be liked, you present a filtered version of yourself. You become a character, predictable, agreeable, forgettable. You lose your uniqueness, you lose your intensity, you lose your edge. People sense the disconnect. They can feel when you're editing yourself in real time. And nothing kills respect faster than inauthenticity. Detaching from approval brings you back to your real identity. It lets you speak from alignment. It allows your natural charisma to surface. It frees your voice. And a free voice is always more compelling than a rehearsed one. Another advantage of detachment is emotional stability. When you're not tied to being liked, criticism doesn't shake you. Judgment doesn't break you. Disagreement doesn't threaten you. You aren't emotionally hijacked by other people's perceptions. You stay centered, you stay grounded, you stay focused on truth instead of applause. People with approval addiction crumble the moment someone disapproves of them. People without it remain unaffected because their confidence isn't rented from others. It's owned. When you detach from approval, conversations feel different. You're not scared to pause. You're not scared to say no. You're not scared to challenge something. You're not scared to express what you honestly believe. You're not scared to disappoint someone if it means staying aligned with yourself. Your communication becomes heavier, clearer, more intentional. People can feel that kind of certainty, and certainty is magnetic. The world respects those who don't beg for acceptance. They respect those who stand firm in who they are. They respect those who speak from inner security, not external permission. Detach from approval and you unlock a level of confidence that doesn't shake, doesn't shrink, doesn't apologize. You stop being controlled by reactions. You stop being shaped by opinions. You start speaking from truth, presence, and power. That's when your communication becomes unstoppable, not because people approve of you, but because you finally stopped needing them to so understand this. Your communication is not just about talking. It's about presence, it's about energy, it's about intention. If you master these 5 secrets, control the first 5 seconds, speak less and mean more, use silence like a weapon, observe before you speak, and detach from approval, you won't just communicate better. You'll gain an unfair advantage in every room you enter. People won't just hear you, they'll feel you, respect you, follow you, and that is how you become truly unstoppable.